Hey, man, y'all ready? Justin Davis, rest in peace.
Never thought I'd be 17. Never thought I'd see 21. Never thought I'd live past 25. Especially where I'm from. Especially where I'm from.
Chicago, home to over 2.7 million residents. Chicago is a city with two faces. One side of that face is filled with tourist attractions that feature professional sports teams, award-winning restaurants, a bolstering nightlife, and a beautiful skyline. The other side of that face features gangs, murder, and lawlessness. This side of Chicago has reared its deadly head for decades and must be addressed. Young bulls.
Unfortunately, I remember all too well being on this exact block on 108th and Perry. I was a homeless teen immersed in the gang life. It was a war at that time, so we were literally in the street holding up traffic by gunpoint, checking for rival gang members. Those times, it wasn't like it was today. The murder rates were 940, 930 murders a year. And that's when I ran into then 10-year-old Robert Little Yummy Sandifer. I remember we were checking a van, and inside that van was a working man. He had on working cargo pants and a matching top with his name on it. And as we waved that van through, Lil Yummy walked up on the van and threw up 3 fingers and yelled, "BD." The man in the van just slowly started to drive off. Lil Yummy followed that car again and yelled, "BD." The man wisely kept his hands on the steering wheel, eyes on the road, and began to drive off. Obviously upset, Lil Yummy pulled out his revolver, pointed at the man's head in the van, and yelled out, "BD," again.
Young bulls is an analogy I use to compare the epidemic of violence in Chicago to an actual phenomenon that occurred in Africa. Here's the short version. A few years ago, the African elephant was hunted for its beautiful ivory tusk. The high demand of ivory products all over the world caused extensive hunting of the adult male African elephant, aka old bull. This hunting changed the shift in dynamics of the makeup of the community of elephants. This hunting caused the community of elephants to be comprised mainly of adult female elephants, young female elephants, and young male elephants, aka young bulls. With very few old bulls to guide them and correct them, these young bulls began to mature much earlier, and they began to become more violent. They began to kill each other. They began to kill other rhinos. They began to challenge and also kill the adult female elephants. The African Wildlife Committee, seeing what was going on, decided to repopulate these community of elephants with adult male elephants, aka old bulls. Once they reintroduced this population with old bulls, they immediately saw that these younger bulls began to fall in line. They began to mature much later. The killing of rhinos, the killing of adult female elephants, and even the killing of the other young bulls on one another dramatically lessened. So what's the point to all this? We need our old bulls, aka the real men of our community, to get back involved and to set the example that they are trying to teach to these young bulls. What are some things that stood out about Demarie, whether it was his sense of humor, his style of dress? some things that made Demarie different from every other boy?
His sense of humor, like you said.
Take us back to that moment, like when you heard that he was shot. What was going through your head?
Like my world ended.
As a mother, how do you deal with that pain of what you just described to me?
I can't.
Your firstborn, the man in your house.
I can't. It's like I talk about him, but talking about him is not like having him here with me. It's like everywhere I look, I see the Demarie face. I see his face everywhere I look. It hurts. I asked my guy the other day, is it always gonna be like this? Am I always gonna see him? And like I'm seeing somebody that I can't even touch.
In regard to your case, somebody besides the cops knows what happens,
Yeah.
knew what's going on.
And
How do you feel as a mother knowing that somebody could?
out here know what happened?
Mm-hmm.
If this was your child, you would want some answers too. Like, how could you live with yourself knowing that the person you even if you sleeping next to him shot a baby?
When it's nighttime and the kids are down and your man is asleep and you're stuck to your own vices and the voices in your head and your own visions, what do you think about?
What I could have did to save him.
After speaking with Tawana, I headed on over to the Roseland division of Ceasefire. Ceasefire is a community organization that attempts to identify hotspots and disrupt the patterns of gun violence within that specific area. I sat down and had a conversation with Justin Jackson of Ceasefire. By the numbers from like 1991 to like 1994, the average number of murders was over 900 a year. If you look at today, the average numbers of murders are in between the high threes to the low fives. And a lot of people say now in Chicago that those numbers are not indicative of how bad it is. Not going by the numbers, would you say it was worse back then, or would you say it was worse now, and why?
I say maybe it's a little worse now, only because of the type of weapons that they're using, you know, and how available the guns are. Well, that's the first step, man. I'm finna go shoot at you. You know, it's not, hey man, we gonna fight, squash it, and leave it alone, man. They ongoing for a stupid reason.
What happens when they don't have guns? Do they run?
Yeah, they run. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a term like no lacking. You know, these young guys got, you know, no lacking means you ain't never out here unprepared. So you always got that pistol on. You always out here because at any given moment, anything can happen. So I think just for that, it's a little bit worse. You know, again, it was a little bit more structured, you know, in gangs. Now it's just kind of like, it's outlawed for real. Like, we just, anybody can get it. You know what I'm saying? You could be GD, and I'll kill another GD if we got problems. But I do think the prisons being privatized, and I think that's one of the worst things ever for the black community. You know, that's one industry that has grown over the years. You know, man, we got more prisons than schools. The prison industry is better than the school. It gets more funding, more money than the school system does.
It's amazing talking to you, because one thing you point out in regards to the prison is the privatization. And with privatization calls for a demand in prisoners.
I mean, it was a judge in, I believe in New Jersey, someplace on the East Coast, and he got disbarred, locked up. I think he's doing maybe 20-something years now for sending young kids to prison for stupid things. You know, sending them into the system, and he was like getting kickbacks from this prison. And to say that that's an isolated incident, you would be crazy to think that. You know, man, I look at how, you know, they set these young kids up. You know, the main thing now is to get them felonies. You ain't got to serve no time. We just give you felonies because you're young. Well, you straighten your life up. You know, somewhere along the lines, whatever, God's graces, you straighten up. Well, now you want a job. You want to do things that every American wants. You know, vote. You know, you can't even protect yourself and get a gun because you have a felony. You can't get student loans because you have a felony. Jobs aren't hiring you. So what do you do when you have this F on your record? You go back to doing illegal things.
First of all, no one has really dealt with the root problems of gun violence, of gang violence, of domestic violence in the African American community. I see it stemming back from many years ago, maybe almost 40 years ago, with the invasion of crack cocaine in our community, with the loss of mothers who became addicts, from the displacement of our husbands and our men who were fathers who left their homes, from living in poverty and depending on the government to be our husbands, to take care of us and provide us with food stamps and subsidize monies and such. So all of this stems from all of that. We had mothers who became addicts who lost their children in the system. These children get caught up in the system. When hurt people are hurt, they hurt other people.
Before Lil Yummy fired, our head yelled, "Get that damn gun from Yummy," and they took the gun from him. I knew then that that young man wasn't one of us. He was just reenacting what he saw all of us do. Back in those days, it wasn't anything for us to shoot somebody and 20 minutes later, we'd be eating at Denny's like nothing had ever happened. I remember another time coming from summer camp 2-a-day football practice, and I was going to hang on the set of the 8-ball, and as I was going to sit on the porch, many of our members were loading up in 2 cars armed with Molotov cocktails and semi-automatic pistols. The cars were basically already loaded, so me and other members that couldn't fit in the car sat on the porch and waited for them to drive only a few blocks down to firebomb a house and shoot everybody that came out. Lil Yummy was with that group. As the men drove down, seconds later, all you could hear is and seconds later, the 2 cars returned. Our head was putting out a fire on his arm at the same time he was yelling at Lil Yummy, "How did you drop the damn gun? How did you drop the damn gun?" And what had happened, when they went to firebomb the house, our rival gang members started shooting out the windows. Lil Yummy got scared, dropped his gun, and ran. It was another sign that he was not one of us. But yet again, I said nothing.
This epidemic of violence not only affects the people who were murdered and the family of bereaved, it affects businesses as well. So I headed downtown to speak to serial entrepreneur Marvin Russell, the CEO of the Ocean Agency. Given the current plight with the African American community, with gangs, drugs, gun violence, what have you, what do you believe is one of the main factors that contribute to this epidemic?
I always boil everything down to 2 things. And 2 things in my life are extremely important, and those 2 things are real simple. It's no excuses and take responsibility. Those are the 2 mantras I live by: taking responsibility and no excuses. And it's first important to have that mentality. If you have that mentality of no excuses and taking responsibility, the doors just open wide up. I have a team of people that I constantly preach to over and over and over again. When they come to me with problems or come to me with situations that they can't handle, I always tell them the same thing. If a client's mad at you for something, you've got to take responsibility, and here's why. The moment that you put the responsibility on somebody else, you're depowering yourself. You're taking away power. Like if I say it's your fault that I did this, I'm not going to change because it's your fault. So you just took all the power away for you to change. But if you take responsibility for everything that happens in your life, you're empowering yourself. Now you have power to make any change you want. And what I see in a lot of communities, especially the African American community, is there's two things missing. It's that never really hardcore, never say die attitude of I always take responsibility, no excuses.
Kind of tell me about that day on the 13th.
The September 13th, 2014 was one of the worst days of my life.
You just had a Christmas pass. How hard was that on you to spend your first Christmas without Ike?
It was hard. Thanksgiving, that empty seat at the table. Every year I cook for my kids, my family. And when Christmas rolled around, I didn't even want to celebrate. I didn't even put up a tree. No lights, no decorations, because I didn't want to celebrate Christmas. So there was no Christmas in my house. It's been 5 months. 5 long months. And I've learned to tell people, oh, I'm okay. But it's not okay because I'm depressed now. I have anger, resentment. I'm a total different person. My life has changed. My life has changed dramatically. I've never been this sad. I'm tired of being sad. I'm tired of being depressed. I've never been on medication in my life, but I'm on it now. I try to stay busy. I try to preoccupy my time, and I try to stay loaded on the medication.
It really takes a family. It actually takes a man and a woman in order to successfully raise a child. The women by themselves can't do it. Men by themselves can't do it. And when they come together, families, communities, grandparents, uncles, next door neighbors, all of them have to wrap their arms and their spirits around children for children to be successfully raised in 2014. I have seen a mom and dad, what they call a mother and a father, a regular nuclear family, they really don't have a chance out here in these streets. If all you have is a mom and a dad, you're gonna need a godmother, you're gonna need an auntie, you're gonna need a mentor. You need all of that to successfully raise a child. But the real answer is, this is all in. Everybody's gotta be all in for us to successfully educate and to socialize our children to be globally competent human beings.
When I was in school, the PE teacher could paddle you, and if you got in trouble. And then when you were sent home, your parents would probably physically punish you as well. And do you think that plays a part in this epidemic that we're facing with losing our children in the street now, lack of discipline?
Yeah, I have absolutely changed, evolved, in my opinion, on what they call corporal punishment. And now I where I used to tolerate corporal punishment, where I was corporally punished. I mean, I remember get beat with the ironing cord, the razor strap, the anything that my grandmama could get her hands on was something that you could be beat with or whipped with. But in 2014, I think we have to change. I don't think we can do that anymore. I know we can't do it anymore. Punishment has got to be much more cerebral and much more spiritual. So now when we punish children, they've got to understand why you punish them, not just to beat them and say, don't ever do that again. Children as young as 3, 4, and 5, they need to understand why you punish them, and then they need to make that connection. And I'm not talking about corporal. I'm saying whether it's denying them watching cartoons, or whether it's saying that you won't be able to play baseball or whatever. But they need to be able to make those connections between the things they like and the things that they should do in life. One of the reasons that black people used to be beat by their parents was to prepare them for life in the South. In the South, black boys could be lynched if they raised their eyes and looked at a white man. And so black parents would beat their children to say, don't raise your eyes, don't go against authority. And in a way, that was the most loving thing they could do to save their children's lives. But in 2014, it's kind of worked in reverse. Now when we beat our children physically, our children go, that doesn't hurt. You can't hurt. I'm not afraid of you. Now when we beat our children are saying, I'm not afraid of you, I'm not afraid of the teacher, I'm not afraid of the police. And instead of it helping our children, it hurts our children. And so we need to find other ways to discipline our young people. We must find, and it is my opinion that we need to find highly spiritual ways to discipline our children. And that includes talking to children, creating different emotional bonds with children, but hitting children doesn't work in 2014. That's why we have ISIS, that's why we have Palestine, that's why we have Iraq and wars all over the world. That's not going to work in 2014.
Many a day, Lil Yummy's grandmother would drive to our set to ask where Yummy was. And while I said nothing, many of the members would lie while Lil Yummy was in the house cowering like a little baby. About a year later, Lil Yummy, I believe, was 11. And they performed a drive-by which a young lady by the name of Siobhan was shot and killed. Lil Yummy was named as the shooter. Chicago placed a big APB out, fearing that Yummy would divulge all of the murders and all of the shootings and all the crime that we were involved in. They decided that Lil Yummy had to die. A few days later, 2 members of the A-Ball set, who were only 14 and 16, killed Lil Yummy execution style. See, I had several chances to speak up, and doing so might have kept Yummy alive to this day. And since I became a man, and in honor of the man who took me off the streets, I vowed never to be silent if I am in a position to speak up and help the next little Yummy or the next pack, because somebody did it for me.
In regards to academics today, how involved do you find that the parents are in these kids' education?
The parents are MIA. They're missing in action. The parents have turned their children over to the schools, literally to be destroyed by whoever's up in those schools. Children today cannot be successfully educated in American schools, black children, without significant parent engagement. Not involvement, not send your children to school. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about parents being in charge of the learning of the children. I'm talking about teachers and principals taking orders from the parents. That's the way these children are going to learn. And right now, black parents are MIA. They're not in the schools.
What are some of the factors that you believe attribute to many inner city kids having this short-sighted belief that if they don't sell drugs, or if they don't rap, or if they don't play professional ball, that they are unable to live successfully?
That's the failure of adults in the community. It's the failure of leaders in the community. the failures of preachers, of elected officials, of business people, of parents. That's why. If black children don't have a vision of what they can be, it's because the black adults have let them down.
Is public education as a whole failing our kids, or is it something else that's failing public education, which in turn brings on that negative plight with our kids?
Yeah, public education pretends that they can teach all children. So it's a wonderful charade. Unfortunately, public education has become a trillion-dollar business, mostly based on the failure of black and Latino children within that system. So public education does quite well. Everybody gets a check. Everybody gets paid. The teachers get paid. The principal gets paid. The janitor gets paid. The cook gets paid. The textbook people get paid. And our children, black children, are at the absolute rock bottom of the American education system. Here in the city of Chicago, at the 8th grade level, only 9% of black boys read proficient. And that's here in the city of Chicago. And everyone is bragging about how wonderful we're doing. That's possibly because in Washington, D.C., it's 6%. In Detroit, it's 5%. In Cleveland and Milwaukee, it is 3% of black boys who read proficiently. So maybe 9% is okay. It's not okay.
After that great conversation with Mr. Jackson, I realized that this film was missing one thing: the voice of the individuals that are doing the shooting. So I traveled to the South Side to speak to some of the gang members in that neighborhood to get their perspective.
I came up in the slums. I came up eating crumbs around poor black young single moms, losing sons to moving tons. Weekly runs, illegal funds. All I see is weed and guns. Seen dope kingpins become bums. Watch wicked women pose as nuns. And wrote red rum to overcome. Rats overrun, so don't be stunned. Some folks just kill folks for fun. Pray you don't lose your closest chum. Cause every day another child gone. In my hood, 17 is a milestone. So go ahead, call 911. Downtown. So all them teachers and preachers I left speechless. Here's my thesis with 2 features. Just some street kids thought that the good life was out of our reaches by the system, so we dissed them. Raised our fist in opposition.
Explain what's going on now. What's the difference between gangs in Chicago in the 90s and how it's turned more into cliquish today?
Back in the 90s, you want to say it was more structure, you know what I'm saying?
Everybody was together.
Ain't no gang leaders nowadays, so everybody like renegade.
That's where you live at.
It is what it is.
So it don't matter if you BD or GD no more. It matters where you grow up.
It's really like who you fucking with.
Like thugs, you know, they BD.
Like it don't even matter if you BD. You know the ops is the ops, and that shit.
And
if we get money together, then we cool. We gonna keep it at that level. You a up.
What determines an op nowadays? You know, back in the days, you knew because of what started.
The opposite. You ain't with me. You on the other side. That's the opposite. You
exactly what it is.
After all the murders and after all the despair and after all the bloodshed and the funerals and the t-shirts with your friends on them, what keeps attracting guys like you to the gang life?
Because we can't stop.
I mean,
it go bad.
At the end of the day, that's how we was. Look, it's like that's all we know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's like gonna chase us the rest of our life.
It go bad once one of the homies get killed. It ain't no like we can kill it, but once one of the bros get killed,
it's over.
It's like when you get this shit.
Like when you get this fuck with, he gonna never.
I feel like you can always kill the beef before it get real. You know. You can kill this shit before once bodies get to dropping, it's over with.
Yeah, but I ain't gonna lie, we ain't killing no beef with nobody. Chris Gray,
they rely on one of this.
Right, no, I feel you. Kill nobody.
We
ain't gonna show no polls, none of that shit. For no motherfucker on parole paper, we ain't gonna do all that. Niggas know what we at in them streets. Y'all can't trust on Evans or Vernon or whatever. Location on, we definitely can meet. It's like real life. It's all it is. We definitely can meet.
And for you guys' case, there ain't no secret what you do. Right. I mean, just being honest, there ain't no secret. Like, do y'all any of y'all parents try to pull you out, beat your head, stop you, or do they kind of just go,
You feel me?
I mean,
at the end of the day, our parents know what it is. As long as when we come in the house, we respect them. That's all.
We was raised right, but shit.
We was raised right, but when we outside the house, it's a different thing.
That was our brothers.
I can't go in my mama's house. I can't go in my mama's house talking about no GDK this, GDK that bullshit. Where she a crib? She won't even honor it, but she know when I leave the crib, she know I'm doing whatever I do.
Advice from somebody on the outside looking in, what can somebody do to stay out of this gun violence? And I'm not saying.
Stay out the way.
Huh?
Don't come in
Go to
the
church.
first.
Don't
Claim
whatever you ain't with. Don't make your ass scared. Go to church.
Come in the first place.
You know what? Those who get shot, the news don't tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? They be in shit, and the news don't say their part. They just say the part when they get shot. Don't nobody in Chicago don't. If you innocent, not too many motherfuckers get shot. Those who get shot, they did. It's something they did.
They did something.
You know what I'm saying?
They did something. It ain't
So
just.
they mamas get on the news crying. They don't know. They don't know what their sons and whoever was doing.
All too often, our young males see the example of what not to be from the adults they encounter. So I decided to gather a group of men who positively affect their communities. We gathered at the Underground Barber Shop in Normal, Illinois, owned by Davin Garrett. Off the top of your head, what are your thoughts on parents enabling these kids in the streets when it comes to this epidemic of violence?
It all starts in the home, man. You know, you see kids in the barbershop wilding out, and it's like if they gonna wild out in here, they wilding out at the crib. And it starts at a young age, man, when you put that stuff in check. My mother instilled fear in my heart at a young age, man. I wasn't allowed to even test the waters with her in the public.
Morality and values and principles, those things are designed to be taught at home. Or not, you know, it's gonna show in the classroom. It's gonna show after school programs. It's gonna show at grocery stores or the barbershops. When kids are wilding out, like Davin said, and acting a fool, it shows you what's taking place and what's not taking place in the home.
You're talking about the city. You got generations of young parents who were indoctrinated in the same culture. So moms might still be repping, you know what I mean? Pops is still repping, look at little folks, you know what I mean? That is carried on, so she might approve of it. That's how you supposed to be.
In rap videos, I heard a lyric on one of Lil Wayne's video that, quote, beat that blank up like Emmett Till. And I'm at the mindset that a lot of this generation has no idea and has lost the identity of our past and what we've gone through. They have lost the reality that men, women, white, black, and other have lost their lives to fight for equal rights so that we as African Americans could dress with dignity, speak with dignity. Somewhere right now, there's a relative of Emmett Till that's still grieving because of that lynching. And I think that there is a big gap in a knowledge of self with these kids and a knowledge of where we come from and how we've got to where we've gotten today. And I think that is part of the problem because of lack of identity with that. And I kind of want to know your thoughts on that.
Huge. Go along with Lucy. I think a person's history is a huge component even to where they're headed in the future. That's like a bird not knowing it's a bird. That's like a bird going his whole life thinking it's an ant, not knowing it could fly. You know what I mean? Everywhere. And it's just walking everywhere. That's huge. When you can take the history of a person away from them, or make something a lot brighter in front of it, placed in front of it, so they don't focus on their history, then whatever that source was did its job. And so I think it's, once again, goes back to our responsibility as men to educate. If we can create, then we have to be able to sustain it and to develop it. And I think that's huge. That's a huge part in the male. And that's another reason why I hadn't had children up until now. I'm 33 years old now, and I feel like, and I don't know as nearly as what I'm supposed to know, but I'm a lot more grounded than I was 10 years ago, 1.5 kids. You see what I'm saying? But that's what we have out here in society. We have young kids just want to have kids. I heard something that's crazy is I want to just put some Jordans on my baby. Are you serious?
That's a hood right.
And we've all seen the Instagram or Facebook posts of Michael Jordan saying they got all the Jordans but don't got a car.
Right.
And we laugh at that, but that's sad.
Parenting, first of all, do you guys feel that it is very important to have both parents in the home when raising a child?
I mean, I think it's important, but I don't think it's necessary as far as the success of the child. I mean, I've seen plenty of children that grew up in single parent households and that came out good or if not great. So it's better, it's important, but I don't think it's necessary. Like, you can still turn out well on a single parent household.
I respectfully disagree, and this is the reason why I say it obviously can happen. It has happened, and it's almost become normal. But the ideal example of a family is a man and a woman, and statistics show that a man and a woman, husband and wife, raising a child tends to come out a lot more ahead than a child with one or a single parent, whether it be a man or a woman. In most cases, we have a woman.
This is just a great example of the conflict between ideal and reality. Obviously the ideal is a two-parent household. Statistics do support that African American males who come out of a two-parent household are significantly more successful. I think the last statistic I read was like 60% more. I mean, that's the ideal, but the reality is what we have. Single-parent households, mother raising I don't know how many kids, and again, we have plenty of examples of it being successful. But I think if we looked at the overall statistics, especially when we're talking about the violence in Chicago, we got kids raising kids because there ain't even no such concept as two parents. The kids are their kids themselves getting other kids pregnant.
Right.
But if we had two parents in the household committed to raising that child together, we wouldn't see the types of things that we see. That's the ideal, but our reality is totally different than that. The reality is we don't even know what a two-parent household looks like in most instances. We can't even fathom it. Our closest reality is the Cosby Show, because most of us haven't seen it growing up.
And how important is it to have a father in playing the ongoing role in a son's life?
Put it like this here. I feel that it's extremely important. I feel that if you just look at the prison system. If it wasn't important, why is it that majority of the men, I don't say majority of the men, but there's a huge gap between men in prison and even our school systems. Our school systems are made up of majority of those that are in control of teaching our children of women. And then you have the numbers of men that are in prison, especially black men. So now we have women teaching our young men, and our fathers are locked up.
In today's times, it's common to become a grandparent in your 30s. Back when we were growing up, it was the grandparents were in the 50s and 60s. And with being in today's times a grandparent in your 30s, there's decades of knowledge that is lost. And so my question basically is, do you feel that becoming parents and grandparents at a much younger age accounts for the lack of knowledge that's bequeathed to these children that are underneath them?
You're still learning. So grandparents that were in their 50s and 60s, they lived through a lot and they saw a lot. Us, we're all in our 30s in here. We're still learning things about ourselves. We're still learning things about life. We're still learning the things about work. We're still trying to get to the levels we want to get at. So we haven't lived the life, and grandparents are in their retired age where they're just sitting back watching and teaching. We're still learning while we're still trying to teach.
I think I agree. Certain things just come with age. You know what I mean? And age doesn't equate to wisdom or knowledge. because I know a lot of old fools. You know what I mean? I'm sure we all do. But I think naturally certain things they come with time. They come with age, and you know, and if we keep breeding this culture where the young can create and bring in children, then we're just setting ourselves up for, you know, just a hard life, and we're setting our children up for a much harder life.
I think more than another issue, not just with the transfer of knowledge, is establishment of success. You know, my grandparents had a house on 99th and Carpenter, and everybody knew that was a safe haven. You know, you get in hard times, you go stay with grandma and grandpa, and you in your 30s, you still trying to get your own house.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're nowhere near retirement. You're still trying to, like Lou said, you're still trying to establish yourself. We don't have that security where we can rely on grandma and grandpa when they still on the rat race themselves.
Right. And being that young.
Yep.
I was raised by my grandfather. Well, I ain't gonna say I was raised by my grandfather, but he was that father figure in my life. And I get that a lot, man. Dad, you got an old soul. Well, you know, that's where it comes from. So imagine my grandfather being 30 years old. It's like, you know, they kept me out of the streets, which I appreciate, but, you know, I appreciate waking up in the morning. I hated it at the time, but man, you about to wake up, get out here in this yard, do this, cut grass, put up drywall, do plumbing. But it's like, man, I don't feel like doing that, but I can use all those stuff that he instilled in me till this day.
And when men are involved with children, they have fewer suspensions, fewer expulsions, fewer disciplinary problems, all the negatives. Girls are less likely to become pregnant. Boys are less likely to join gangs and use drugs just because their fathers are involved. This is how you fix America. You get fathers involved, you get men involved. It is the missing ingredient right now today, out here in these streets. So when you hear about shootings in Chicago, when you hear about murders in Chicago, what you're really hearing is that men are not involved in these boys' lives. That's what you're hearing.
His dad, who was in and out of his life, he was not the man he should have been. He was not the father that he should have been. I don't give him much credit at all. It was a struggle financially not to have his father, but I was always that loving mother, and I tried to give him all the advice that he needed, but some things I just couldn't help him do.
I mean, my daddy left when I was 1, you know what I'm saying? He came back when I was probably about, what, 15, 16, thinking he couldn't be a daddy, trying to tell me what to do. I looked at him like he was crazy.
One of the factors that contributes to the delinquency and the epidemic of violence is aid. And aid like Section 8, welfare, and their point to that was simple. Not because necessarily it's a handout, but because it promotes single parenting. Like to be on Section 8, the dad can't be in the home. To get certain handouts, the dad can't be in the home. So with that being the case, not only are they required to live below a certain socioeconomic standard, they can't have the dad in the home. And this lifestyle shows children that it's better off to work less hard and receive aid than to bust your butt with 2 jobs to barely make ends meet. And I just kind of want to know you guys' opinion, and this is a disclaimer. I understand there are people that do need aid, but there's a whole lot that don't.
Right.
So what are your opinions on that type of aid being maybe a factor that helps contribute to the epidemic of violence or the miseducation of our kids?
Can it be a pacifier sometimes?
It is a pacifier.
It is.
It was supposed to be temporary though. It's meant to be temporary. But people get on it and then live their life generations. I know people, their parents is on it. I mean, their parents are on it, now they're on it, their kids are gonna be on it. It's
3 generations.
Right, 3 generations, right. On
that have views, right. and it's become.
It's like you look forward to.
Yeah, but it's something that was supposed to be. But it's something that's supposed to be until you got back on your feet.
The simple answer is, I don't believe in those things. I really don't. Do I believe they're needed and they're necessary? Yes, but for a limited time. You know,
for a limited number.
A limited time for a limited number.
Right.
Those things, let's not beat around the bush, they are abused.
Mm-hmm.
By the government who's giving them out, and by the people who are taking them. Both are abusing it. They need to be insulted. They need to be so insulted and so demeaned and upset that anybody would offer them a handout or whatever it is, welfare, food stamps, any type of subsidy. They need to be upset that they need to take pride and say, absolutely not, 100%, I do not want anything, I don't need anything from you, thank you, but I don't need it. They need to be more upset. Too many times, people are proud of it. They don't care. And I don't mean to, I won't say the specific name on TV, but you had somebody, African American woman, on TV, national spotlight, say just a few months ago that don't be ashamed that you had to get your welfare check. Be proud, it's fine. You got your welfare check, it's fine. Don't be ashamed of that. If you're a mom that needs that, don't be ashamed of that. And I'm sitting there thinking, why would you ever say that in a million years to a bunch of people that are taking welfare handouts or whatever, that they shouldn't be ashamed of it? You're basically telling them it's okay and stay on it and it's okay. And you can argue what she meant by that left and right.
Right.
The point is that you should be ashamed of it. And I'm not saying it's something wrong. If you need it, you need it. Get on it and get off it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But don't be proud of it. Be ashamed. You know, I do a lot of things that I've done a lot of things that I've had to do that I was ashamed of. I'll give you one example. When I started my own company, I barely made any money. I'm sure there was many nights where I ate ramen noodles. You think I was proud of that? Yeah, I'm proud that I'm starting my own company, but I'm not proud that I want to eat ramen noodles, so I'm gonna keep doing it, you know?
Every time you look up, somebody's declared to have ADHD, bipolarism. In your opinion, do you believe there's an overdiagnosis and an in your opinion, do you believe that these kids are being overdiagnosed with mental disorders like ADHD and bipolarism versus addressing the real issue, which sometimes can be discipline?
I would say, in probably most instances, I mean, there are some kids legitimately need to be on medication. But I think a lot of times you got teachers who are not familiar with the culture, who aren't able to relate to the children and can't control their behavior in the classroom. They have ADHD, or they need to be in a special school, or they need to be in a special class, they need to be separated because they don't know how to deal with it. And then they over-medicate these kids, and then those kids are dependent upon those medications. And then you got real issues. Then they really have issues when they don't get the medicine. Before they were good. They just needed some discipline. But now that are dependent upon that medicine, they're just like any other junkie. They're gonna act out.
I think that our children are being pimped by the pharmaceutical companies, by the educators, and even by their own parents. I think that many of the parents want their children diagnosed with these disorders, if you will, so that they can get SSI checks from the government. So when you ask me about these mental illnesses, I think that we probably have as little real mental illness as we had 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. But now our children are being overdiagnosed with these disorders, and there are people making hundreds of millions of dollars off of the overdiagnosis of black children and Latino children with these what you call mental illnesses. I think it has to stop.
Why do you think you get in so much trouble?
Cause the way I take stuff, like I do stuff because I want to do it. If I just think before I act, I probably won't have a record.
And why do you think you can't control that? Is it medication? Is it?
It's just, well, if I take my medication, I'll be straight. But I'm not gonna use that as an excuse. I'm just
take medication for what?
Cause my disabilities, my ADHD, my bipolar.
The reality is that you are not able to turn off your subconscious. And with that being said, do you feel that these kids that are inundating themselves with gangster rap, from, I'ma kill you, to degrading women, to women only, purpose is to serve sexually, to I'm gonna sell drugs and make it. Do you think that that is stagnating the mental growth of these kids as a whole?
I tell parents, you will either control the media that your children consume. That means videos, YouTube, cell phones, CDs, all of it. Either you will control the media that your children consume, or the media will control your children. And what that means is, it doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. It doesn't matter what values you have. It doesn't matter what you model. If you don't control the media, which, at best, you're one voice telling your children what's right. But if you don't control the media, they will hear it from everywhere what they should do and why they should do it. And it will not be the things that you want them to do.
Well, it's again, you're inundated with messages. You're exposed to things on a constant basis. It's gotta affect you. It has to.
Let's think about music first, right? Let's think about the power of music.
Okay.
Music is emotion. Mm-hmm. It evokes emotion. It's something we listen to in all parts of our life. When we wake up in the morning, we listen to it to get energy. Mm-hmm. When we go to bed at night, we listen to it to relax and help us go to sleep.
Okay.
If you're an athlete, you listen to it before you take the field.
Mm-hmm.
If you're preparing for an exam, maybe you put on opera, maybe you put on some jazz to help you calm down. Mm-hmm. Music, when you're driving, you listen to music. When you're walking down the street, you're on the bus, you listen to music. It's always around us. It's creating emotions. It's evoking emotions. And for somebody to say that gangster rap has no influence, basically is saying that music has no influence on emotion, because it does.
You're right, man. If all you listen to is, angry music, and music that's telling you one thing, that psychologically, man, that does affect you.
How important is it for our youth to maintain above average grades and remain free of a criminal record?
I mean, we already know statistically that we have to over-succeed.
Yeah.
We can't just do average. We can't just do good. We have to over-succeed. And having a felony is like being a second-tier citizen in this country. Having a felony, you are permanently in a caste system that says you will never ever have the opportunities that other Americans will have ever again in life. So you can have A's all your life. If you get a felony, it's over for you.
Right.
In Chicago, it seems as if we've adopted gang violence and its related murder as a normal way of life. I mean, yes, there are small traces of outrage and marches. Tell me what goes through your head when you see incidences in Chicago where thousands of people are blocking the streets and demonstrating, rioting over police interaction in another state, knowing that you can barely get 20 to 40 people to demonstrate every 6th, 7th, or 10th murder in Chicago.
It angers me. And it angers me because it makes me think of the saying, you need to clean up your own backyard first.
Tell me a fond memory of Michael, like a joke or a prank or...
You know what? It's not even a joke. I had fell and hurt myself at work in 2012. And at this time, Michael, he was wrestling and he was filling out a little bit. And I had to have surgery on my ankle. And by us living on the 3rd floor, I couldn't use the crutches to get upstairs because by the time I got out of surgery and it was time to come home, my ankle was killing me and I had a cast on. So I was trying to crawl up the stairs. And when they told him, oh, your mama crawling up the stairs, I guess he was cooking. He stopped cooking. Michael flew downstairs and he said, He said, Mom, I got you. Get on my back. I say, boy, we both gonna fall. And he was like, no, Ma, I got you. And my baby grabbed me and threw me on my back, threw me on his back like a sack of potatoes. And that baby carried me all the way upstairs and put me in the bed. Losing my son taught me the true meaning of hurt. You go through life thinking that you've been hurt. But losing a child, you learn that everything before was just a disappointment. It wasn't a hurt. It feels like I had to learn how to be a mother all over again. I never really got a chance to grieve the loss of my son because I had 3 other children. And we had to pull each other together. But I couldn't cook. Because how do you go from cooking for 5 to 4? How do you go from making certain things that you knew he loved, but you still gotta make it for the other 3? Going shopping, but you missing one. Having a smile when everything in you was falling apart.
We have to get back to the core principles of parenting. We have to stop pacifying these kids and treating these kids as if they are equals. We have to get out of pacifying these kids and substituting materialism for core values in parenting. For you youngsters in the street, I've been there, done that. We have to be accountable and take responsibility for our actions. You see the individuals with their heads down in court and they're sad and they're sorry that they made that vital mistake. When in reality, you're sorry you just got caught. Be proactive in your future. Get rid of these colloquialisms and these excuses like, I'm just dealing with what was placed in front of me. This is the environment I grew up in. That defeatist attitude and that scapegoat type of thinking will be the reason for your demise and the demise of our city. It's not always about your environment. Let me tell you this. The same boiling water that hardens the egg softens the potato. So it's not always about your environment and your conditions, but it's always about what you're made of. And I want you to remember that everyone on this earth was born with the same 3 things: a mind, a body, and a lifetime. How you proactively nurture and care for the first 2 will ultimately decide the third.
Justin Davis, rest in peace.
Never thought I'd be 17. Never thought I'd see 21. Never thought I'd live past 25. Especially where I'm from. Especially where I'm from. Especially where I'm from. Especially where I'm from. Never thought I'd be 17. Never thought I'd see 21. Never thought I'd live past 25. Especially where I'm from. Especially where I'm from. Especially where I'm from. Especially where I'm from. I came up in the slums. I came up eating crumbs around poor black young single moms, losing sons to moving tons. Weekly runs, illegal funds. All I see is weed and guns. Seen dope kingpins become bums. Watch wicked women pose as nuns. And wrote red rum to overcome. Rats overrun, so don't be stunned. Some folks just kill folks for fun. Pray you don't lose your closest chum. Cause every day another child gone. In my hood, 17 is a milestone. So go ahead, call 911. Downtown. So all them teachers and preachers I left speechless. Here's my thesis with 2 features.